there's a huge conflict of interest. That's all. I mean, why? Because you let high school kids in, your current union members might lose their job, right? Because here comes the next great high school player, and the guy's last guy on the team for an NBA team loses his job because now there's more, pathways to enter the league. And that's it used to be, as you know, could come right out of high school with LeBron did. And now it is the one and done. You must be out of high school 1 year, which we're going to get into. So welcome to you too. We're just going around while we get hooked up here. And thanks for taking the course. And what's your area of interest and how you getting along so far? Please.
Actually, I don't know. I'm not interested in sports, but I'm interested in entertainment.
Oh, okay. Well, sports is entertainment. Anybody watch the Super Bowl? That was entertainment. Again, wasn't so right. Halftime show was. Are we?
We're
live?
good. Yeah,
Okay.
we are recording and the live session is going.
Okay. Well, welcome to those of you who couldn't be here today. Like Aaron, let me introduce, of course, it's Ricky, whom you know. Aaron is our research and teaching assistant who's helping us keep this thing together. When we can't meet in person, if you have any questions, my email is there, and please do let me know. But we thought we would, rather than just repeat that which you've already studied, go through some of the live session questions. These were sent in by you guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I sort of anticipate as this because the first one, are these on the website so we can follow along?
Yeah. No, I can send them to them right now and just post an announcement, but we can do that so you guys can look at them as well.
Or we'll just do them live. Why is the NFL structured so differently in terms of commissioner roles and the uniform player contract? Does the MLB tend to be better because it's been around longer and made necessary adjustments? So really good question. It's kind of what I anticipated. And it really comes down to the union not doing a good job of negotiating the NFL contracts and allowing personal conduct policy to get through. Right? Maybe it was bargained, maybe it wasn't. At least it became part of, and is now a constituent part of that which controls, to Francesco's point, domestic violence. You read about personal conduct policies, anything conduct detrimental, harms the integrity of the league, can result in suspensions, including, this whole regimen of the Josh Gordon study guide was not using a paper update to play yourself right out. Pretty short. No, not short. It took him a long time, but he did. So how did the commissioner get so much power over off-field conduct? Is maybe one way of approaching this question. And if the union allowed him to have it. Okay, and in the other leagues, the unions were stronger and they didn't give the commissioner. It goes to final binding arbitration in the other leagues, these kinds of grievances. Okay, then we have some examples in the book about how the NBA, 50,000 or more, and the commissioner's authority or not. And Major League Baseball, we have the regimen for if it's, a more serious offense than, it almost everything is arbitrable, like independent arbitrators accept. So that's really a very good jumping off point, especially, like if you're not familiar with these leagues, you would think the Court of Arbitration for Sport, international sports in the law, it all goes to ultimate arbitration. It's not the commissioner of the league who has the final say off field. But it is sort of the point. It's almost like the baseball antitrust exemption over there. There's this thing called the baseball antitrust exemption where they're exempt from antitrust scrutiny of Major League Baseball. That's more historical artifact of case law. Case law that we're going to get to. But I think that's a really good first question. It really summarizes kind of chapter 1 and commissioner's authority and how and why is it structured so differently, and does the MLB tend to be better? It's been around longer than they made adjustments. Well, as we get into it, said, I mean, it used to be, back in the day, as you look at the legal evolution, that Kennesaw Mountain Landis was the commissioner, was the potter familia. He made every decision. It was not appealable. Right? And the union just said, you know, that came out of the gambling. Anybody ever see the movie 8 Men Out? It's great. It's on. I watched it last night. I watched it for like the 10th time. But it's the Black Sox scandal was. They got to the White Sox. I call them Black Sox because they cheated. The gamblers got and they had to throw the series. Have you seen the movie? Yeah, it's a great movie. It's really great. John Cusack is in that. And my wife watched something else. You're not going to watch that stupid movie again, are you? Yeah, because we're going to talk about it. Anyway, so the gambling thing. So they gave him plenary authority. Kennesaw Mountain Landis, he came in, whatever he said, you know, we got some examples of. So historically, that's how commissioner's authority began, is to stop gambling, you know, which isn't that the worst of the things that you can do? I'll refer to you guys. I mean, isn't, you know, having somebody on the take, throwing a game, the worst thing is unlevel the playing field that a commissioner ought to have. And of course, now the rules are, the union is negotiating. If you're caught, you're done. I mean, it's right, but we're talking about the evolution, right? I mean, every locker room, every major league minor league locker room says if you can't leave, you're done. You know, and that's clear, you know. But in the legal evolution of this, is that the worst thing? Is that the worst threat to the integrity of the sport, or is it more like Josh Gordon, who just couldn't stay off of whatever he was doing? Ricky, what do you think? Go ahead, chime in.
Yeah, my thought has always been the gambling side. You know, people's belief in the game that a sporting event is simply figuring out which team is the better team that day. You know, I think that's if you can't actually believe in that idea that someone on the field may be intentionally, whether it's shaving points for gambling or betting purposes, or whether it's throwing a game entirely, that's where people stop believing in the sport and stop wanting to consume it. You know, the Josh Gordon situation is certainly interesting. I think there are some that you know see it there, as with everything that's happening right now, not just in sports. People see it from different lights and understand that it might just be you know the addiction side of it. They understand that athletes aren't above getting addicted to things. And so I don't know that ever really shakes the belief of fans in the product at the end of the day, but maybe.
I think gambling is probably the worst thing because, I mean, you watch sports, they're for entertainment value. The whole point of them is to entertain you, and the best way to do that is through pure competition. I mean, a lot of these rules are created to make sure that teams are competitive. You look at like salary caps, you look at draft order, why those are the way they are, is to make sure things are competitive. And I think that once you take that away, it's almost like, what's the point of the sport? What's the point of the game? Why even watch it? There's not as much value in it, I think.
Watch the WWE.
Yeah,
Watch
exactly.
something that's scripted.
Are they popular in Italy, big time wrestling? Or UFC?
Oh, yeah, when I was a child, I
Mhm.
loved to watch wrestling.
Everybody. And it's all fake. I mean,
Oh, yeah, I discovered it later that it was
Totally.
fake. At the
Ah.
beginning,
It's way worse in person. That's when you can really see that they're pulling punches.
no. Well done.
Questions are online. They're also now projected up here, so you guys.
Oh, great, thank you. So, all right, well, let's move along. And again, we're sort of tracking, I've got the table of contents, you know, we go through in chapter 1, gambling, misconduct on the playing field, you know, personal conduct policy, performance enhancing drugs, the various programs, you know, for dealing with these things, diversity in sports, we get into that a little more in a little bit. And recent punishments, which is Deflategate and the Astros hacking scandal. So that's like chapter 1, the first 50 pages with study guides in the back to give you more detail if you need it. But the next question is, what position do you expect the NFLPA? These are really good. Did you guys write these? What position do you expect the NFLPA to take in the eventual renegotiation? I can do this right here, Lindsay. This is you. Did you see this one? Okay, well, it's your question, right? Particularly, how do you think the PA will curb the commissioner's power, prevent pseudo unilateral changes such as the PCP? So we've been been asked this before, and I think they're gonna strike. I think there's gonna be either a strike or a lockout. Like we've had before, they're already telling the players to anticipate, like start saving your money, right?
Yes, simultaneously, we have both the MLB, which I know wasn't the question, but the MLB and the NFL, or the NFLPA and the MLBPA are already setting aside strike funds. And the players sign off on those, just so that everybody understands. Generally, it's out of like image rights sharing or some sort of allocation that's not directly tied to their salary. They'll set that aside as their strike fund. And both PAs have already started doing it in preparation for what looks like it's going to be at best a very bitter negotiation, at worst potentially 2 different lockouts.
And what are we talking about here? Excuse me while I have my lunch. We're talking about a percentage of defined gross revenue or basketball related income. So, I mean, this has been heavily negotiated to your point, Justin. Very heavily negotiated. We're talking billions of dollars that come into these coffers, and each of the leagues and the unions have agreed what counts as basketball related income in the NBA, what counts as football related defined gross revenue. Okay. Then at the table, the baseball is the same thing. So, and again, stop me if this is too elementary, but it is the heart of the answer to this question. What happens, the most important thing that happens at that bargaining table is what percentage of that defined gross revenue is going to go to the players. You know, that's it. I mean, that's like everything else is second, right? So, answer the question more particularly, the way we've answered it before is to say, sure, we'll change commissioner's authority. You get 1 point less on defined gross revenue. And that's like how many hundreds of millions of dollars, like each point. Like a couple hundred million. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you pay me enough, I'll change anything. But yes.
How often is the renegotiation happen?
This was a 10-year deal for the NFL.
So every year it's, or every time they negotiate, they set a term. It's not like every 4 years.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, this was, it really got, again, legal terms screwed. I mean, the players really got, they don't want to change it until the last negotiation. But they got, their defined gross revenue percent went way down and they didn't get anything on the commissioner's report. Nothing.
So, I mean, to answer the question specifically, how might they get there? I mean, to Professor Arfani's point, give up points in the distribution, or you could see something like an 18-game schedule, which thereby increases the entire pool, puts the players more physically at risk. But again, it's a give and a take, where as long as the owners' pockets get heavier in the negotiation, they could be willing to cede some of the commissioner's power.
I mean, you look at the rich get richer. When we get into franchise relocation down the road, right? Of course we want new stadium built. Of course we want Kroenke wants to build this palace to himself, so make Jerry World look like, Tinker Toy. And why? Because every time you open up a new territory, like who has to pay to get the new territory, and who gets those hundreds of millions of dollars? The other owners, right? I mean, so this is all about maximizing people who are billionaires making multi-billionaires. I mean, it really is on the ownership side, especially in football. I mean, it's the golden goose. And we will get into concussions, and we do a little bit on, career-ending, injuries, even in the drug context, course care, that sort of thing. But let me just step back a second and ask you if this whole, as I call it, the concussion crisis, as you who are otherwise interested in American football, less interested, does it bother you?
I don't think so. But I'm kind of
Would you let
At least
your-
he's honest.
Would you let your son, hey, Mr. President Trump, would you let your son?
Yeah.
You want to? Yeah, you want to. What do you think? Or too darn dangerous.
Actually, probably would like them play the ball.
But we'll get into these. Kind of, and again, it goes back to overly regulated. We get into the concussion, the massive NFL concussion litigation. Some get into down the road. I mean, Ricky, you know how passionate I am about this. Deny again. You know, I mean, it's just like very few people relative to the number who are applying are getting paid. That's some, and guess who is getting paid? The lawyers. You know, on a fee basis. So I'm a little bit jaundiced on that one, but I'm straying a little bit. So how do you think the PA will curb the commissioner's power, prevent city, you know, which you're right. Whoever wrote this in, that's exactly what they did. They changed the personal conduct policy on their own motion. Why? In the middle of it, as we say in the book. Why and how could they? Because it was still consistent with the commissioner's powers as they had been, and then just an expansion thereof. I mean, we describe it in the book. It's kind of a, now you see it, now you don't. Well, we had it, and it really includes this, and now it's going to include that. You know, and it's really a spiral out of control. And I think DeMaurice Smith is head of the NFL Players Association, who's been a guest for us on many occasions. Really didn't know what he was doing at the bargaining table last time. You know, there was a lockout. The players weren't getting paid. They were sort of forced. They had guns. The bargaining team had guns held to their heads by the players to say, "Get us something. You know, we're dying here."
Yeah.
And they cut a very bad deal. So.
And there was not a strike fund.
There was no strike fund.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Oh boy, another good one. This is really great. Whoever sent this in thing. Does the just cause standard used in stifle the commissioner's discretion? It could be argued to fall into the best interest. That's a really insightful question. Well, is it arbitrary and capricious? We have this whole study guide on, you know, Garvey is one Supreme Court case that's interesting, you know. Like once you agree to final binding arbitration, the Supreme Court has said in Garvey, you're stuck with it unless basically you're out of your mind, you know, unless the arbitrator was on the take or got paid or was had a conflict of interest that was unresolvable. So whether it's just cause or arbitrary and capricious, that overturning of commissioner's authority effectively in Sprewell is something that has been fixed now by a redefinition of on the court. On the court, now means on the premises. So once you step foot on the premises, it's in the book, there's a new. So they kind of had to fix that. But that's why it's still in the case book, right? Because it came out the wrong way. I mean, at the end of the day, you should have almost absolute deference to final binding arbitration once the union has agreed to that, okay? It would only be, and the Federal Arbitration Act is in parallel. We see this in the Blakey, where, you know, yes, it was overturned by the federal judge, but then the Second Circuit said, no way, no way, no. You, the union, agreed to final binding arbitration. The arbitrator, in that case, being Commissioner Appeal, was to himself, you know, which is crazy. I like what I did the first time, you know, kind of thing. It's wacky. So I guess whether it's just cause or arbitrary or capricious, but the best interest provision should prevail and conduct detrimental. You know, the commissioner or his designee, when he decides he has to recuse himself in the NFL, or the arbitrator in the other two leagues. I mean, it would undermine the team's power, the league's structure, and everything else. You had willy-nilly, you know, these final binding arbitrations, whether it be the commissioner or the arbitrator, or arbitrators, being overruled by court. If you have that, then you're in la la land. You're never. Right? Do you want to add to that?
Yeah,
It's a really good question.
It's definitely a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, though, to me, it's always made sense. This is one of the things. There's a lot of topics in this course that are difficult to wrap your head around the first time you go through it. But something that's collectively bargained in this sense, which is the arbitration process, having arbitrators, granted, it's a little skewed in the NFL's case because it's the same person that rendered the original decision, but that's the person that is in it, that understands what's actually going on in the context of the sport. If you have the ability to run off to court every single time something goes wrong, it could disrupt the ongoing nature of the league. Plus, you end up with judges who have no clue what they're doing in this space. And then trying to interpret a CBA is just never a good thing, which is why in a few weeks we'll get to the non-statutory labor exemption and why those CBAs don't have the ability to be interpreted as long as they are bargained in good faith and all that. So to me, this is one of those things that's kind of always made sense. The fact that it goes through this arbitration process, what comes out on the other end, you have to live with it.
Well, it's like, excuse me again. Thank you for joining me for my lunch. So, it's no different than if there was the Teamsters Union or the Plumbers Union, right? I mean, once their management team has agreed to, I got a workplace injury. Oh, and the Teamsters Union said, steelworkers say, okay, well, then we go through this process, right? You don't go running off to court and say, well, I don't like how that process came out.
Negotiate it better next time.
Right. That sometimes makes it easier to understand. Just say, any union that agrees to final binding arbitration, whether it be of injuries or whether it be off field, any union that agrees to that, their members are stuck with it. And the Section 301 of the Labor Management Relations Act says exactly that. If you try to go run off to court, you don't like that because your union agreed not to run off to court. So, and the NFL, again, coming to Francesco's point, has agreed that virtually everything is resolved in this hermetically sealed system of collectively bargained grievances. There's like 17 different kinds of grievances you could have in the NFL, and they all go to final arbitration. Okay.
Yeah, next quote. So how far do you think the 2019 NFC Championship game lawsuit will go? Is it just a publicity stunt? How likely is it that a court can compel the league Goodell to invoke an official NFL rule that provides remedies for something that was extraordinarily unfair? I think the simplest answer to this is yes, it was a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
Like that, I've read that there's even the possibility that the attorney that filed the suit could be brought up on sanctions
Yeah.
in Louisiana.
Wait, can you briefly describe what the lawsuit was?
Yeah. So there is a rule in the CBA and in I forget, it's like Article 7, yeah, something 17 to something. Yeah, where if something occurs in a game, the commissioner actually does have the ability to either A, replay the entire game, or B, you start play, you fix what went wrong, and then you restart play from that moment. So in this case, it would have been first and goal, Saints ball, a minute, whatever, 4 seconds left or something like that. Had he invoked the rule, or the entire, the Rams and the Saints show up and they play the whole thing over again. That was basically what the rule that was in play, and then the lawsuit itself was for, I forget the different things they threw out there, but it was like mental anguish and
Intentional infliction of
yeah,
emotional
intentional
distress.
defliction, yeah. Those sorts of things on Saints fans, and that basically the NFL and Roger Goodell, by not enforcing this rule, was inflicting this damage on the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans Saints.
And there are a couple more links online that allude to some of the more basic facts. And I guess this answers the first question, is that it was dismissed like this past week, January 31st.
It was time sensitive also, obviously.
Yeah, because the Super Bowl was a week after, or 2 weeks after.
Yeah, because if he wasn't going to make them replay the game, he's certainly not going to make them replay the game and then replay the game.
Yeah.
So
That'd be a money play for Goodell. This team didn't
yeah, you
win
never
2
know,
Super
but
Bowls.
can't put it past.
Yeah.
There's a little link on it. Just,
Thank you.
sure. Yeah, but it's one of those, again, you can't compel the commission. Well, he really didn't have, that's the harder question.
Yeah.
He really didn't have the authority
Yeah.
to have the game replayed. I mean, he's got pretty amazing authority, but there's like 1, 2, 3 little things, and none of them apply.
Yeah.
So if it had gone on the merits, they would have lost anyway.
It clearly says like this is exempt, this power is exempt for like officiating. Or,
That's what, yeah. Because otherwise, you'd have lawsuits over every bad call.
yeah. Right. And that's obviously the point in dismissing this, is like the slippery slope argument is like every bad call can be
Yeah, 'cause
challenged
then-
in a lawsuit.
In reverse, the Rams fans could file a lawsuit for like the missed face mask call and the other ones that they pointed out, and you just
It'd be
end up with a
Tens of
horrible
those a
result.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have a lawsuit coming out of every game except for when the former Browns, pre-Baker Mayfield Browns,
Yeah.
when they were getting blown out. Calls weren't changing. That's happening. So during the lead up to the Super Bowl, there was a lot of focus on the Rams Saints missed pass interference call. In this period, I learned that Commissioner Goodell has the power to override a game's result and order the teams to replay the game. Though again, that's within limited confines. Is this power unique to Goodell in the NFL, or are there similar powers in the NBA, MLB? Has this power ever been exercised, and what circumstances would lead to an acceptable exercise of this power? The closest thing I can think of in the MLB and NBA context is best interest of the game power. If there was like gambling or some sort of point shaving incident, I can't think of a rule that allows them based off of something that occurs in the game to replay it.
Right, I mean, right, remember, these are all heavily negotiated. And maybe a point to make here is because we're gonna get the uniform player contract. So we got the collective agreement, right? And then back to back is uniform player contract. So each player in each league signs a pretty similar uniform player contract in which the player agrees to be bound by the relevant provisions of the CBA. Okay, so that's how in Deflategate, you couldn't say, well, I wasn't on notice that I could be punished for this. Right? He couldn't really say that because he had signed a uniform player contract, which on a back-to-back basis incorporates by reference Article 46, right, which is the conduct detrimental, right? So, I mean, anything that tries to get outside of this very heavily collectively bargained regimen is almost doomed to failure. But that's kind of repeating what we said before.
Yeah, the one thing I'll throw out there is it does kind of go to show the legal term screwy nature of the NFL's CBA because they have all these exceptions to things, whereas the MLB and the NBA, for the most part, it's pretty steadfast. If A, then B. If X, then Y.
Right.
Whereas the NFL, whether it comes to personal conduct policy, the new domestic violence policy, it's if A, then B, unless C, except for D. And so there creates all this wiggle room within the agreements that gives Commissioner Goodell or whoever the commissioner is at the time, the ability to sort of have very broad stroke powers and authority over things. And this is just another one of those examples where, like, why is this rule in there to begin with?
Right.
You know, if it didn't exist, this issue would have, people would have still been up in arms, and I'm sure someone might have still filed a lawsuit, but they wouldn't have had a rule to point to suggest that this is something that could have happened. So
I think the closest that we've talked about, I think we have a link up there, is that the Saints, they said of Bottlegate as kind of one of the precedents they wanted to use for this, where there was a bad call, another play was run, but they reviewed the play before and it was overturned. And then, obviously Cleveland fans started throwing bottles all over the field because they're drunk Cleveland fans. But then, they go into the locker room and then Commissioner Tagliabue calls the refs, tells them to, go back out and finish the game. They never overturned a call or anything, though. He kind of just told them to go have whoever they were playing, their quarterback, go kneel down twice. It wasn't really it wasn't strong precedent whatsoever. What? Jaguars, yeah. So, I mean, that's, I guess, one of the closest things that at least these attorneys could find to this NFL, the commissioner power here being used in that way, but unsuccessful, not same situations at all.
But again, I think it goes to show that the NBA, I think, over the time that I've taken this course and then been the teaching assistant and now helping Professor Carfani with teaching it, my mind has changed. I used to say it was the MLB was the best, and now I think really it's the NBA. But it's kind of driven by the money as well, and by the fact that they have two really great leaders, both on the PA side and on the league side, that are very forward thinking, that are trying to make prospective rules as opposed to making reactionary decisions. And I think that's why we're seeing the NBA flourish right now in a lot of different ways.
It sort of ties in with, skip a couple of questions, the whole, what happens during the national anthem? Well, in the NBA, I refer to this on the premises, rules, okay, are collectively bargained. So you're on the premises, through their union, they have agreed that they will not do what Kaepernick does, but they will stand for, I mean, there have been challenges over the years, First Amendment, Abdul Rauf, people like that, stand for the national anthem, but they're violating their agreement. Whereas the NFL had no such
They had suggestions.
recommended
Recommendations,
best
yeah.
practice kind of thing, but the union had never agreed. So it was in that Never Never Land where it was, then it just defaulted to the team disciplining or not, right? And then, certain Kaepernick being the most famous example, maybe he was collusively moved out of the league. Nobody wanted to touch him because of his damage goods. Maybe he just couldn't play anymore, But at the end of the day, if some player, and then it came up with like crazy rules, like, our team's gonna do this, and our team's gonna do that. So
Okay, the team by team.
the team by
policy that
team
they
policy.
tried
which
to,
was
Yeah.
to
crazy,
release at the beginning of the season.
Which was crazy. And then the TVs weren't even gonna cover national anthems, right, for a while. So, oh, no, God, so my deal, you know. But that just, like, in the union, either the union, maybe, no, just did a bad job of leaving that door open, you know, and it was left open. No less
And
negotiation.
going back to the first discussion post, who's the best commissioner and why?
Right.
Yeah.
Specific example, not just league, but going back to Adam Silver, as soon as that happened, him and Michelle Roberts were on the
Right.
phone figuring out, okay, we have this rule. We don't want players to just massively start kneeling or sitting out or whatever the case might be. So let's work together to figure out how we can allow our athletes to still have a voice while working within the confines of the rules.
And I think, again, piggyback off what Ricky said, in terms of like commissioner power, I think the NBA has allowed its players to have, a lot more options where the NFL, a lot of NFL players are a little more hesitant to do certain things or voice certain things in certain ways, due to threat of punishment. So I think the NBA players didn't feel like that was something that they necessarily needed to do, considering they had other options to voice their opinions on social issues or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at study guide 14, to Aaron's point, NFL uniform equipment rules and policies, you don't have to look at it now. But I mean, it's like, you can't wear these cleats, you can't do this, you can't do that, the no fun thing, they've got, it's like, just so, it kind of gets, even the next point, in terms of farsightedness, on the gambling, I mean, Adam Silver was way out front on gambling. We gotta have this. It's happening.
It's in the CBA. Like
Right.
they had a prospective
Right.
clause in the CBA saying that gambling revenue would be considered under the gross league revenue formula. So they knew it was coming. And so again, it's just how well Michelle and Adam have done in running both sides of that. And it's just a perfect example of how the sort of prosperity a league can experience when you have both sides working together, as opposed to the NFL where, I don't know, that D. Smith and
No.
Roger Goodell even go into the same
Yeah.
room with each other. So it's just a polar, yeah, exactly. It kind of is just cage match round 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. It's polar opposite examples.
Well, and the guaranteed contracts the same way. I mean, like John Wall just went up. Yeah, it might be done. It might be
For
done, but
over a
great,
year.
famous multi-year, multi-million.
The new Supermax contract.
He had him behind.
Right, yeah.
So
We have a link on that too.
Do we? It's like
here somewhere.
40 million,
46,
46,
yeah.
48. I mean, he had the new Supermax, which that goes back to what Chris Paul and LeBron said they wanted, kind of the last negotiation. So John Wall's the first, I think, first benefits here.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
him and one other guy, I'm forgetting who it was now. Both signed Supermax deals right around the same time. But yeah.
So if he can never play again, I mean, Convertino would have insured him, hopefully, or somebody smart would have insured him, but he's still guaranteed those money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Unless there's some.
talk about a union doing a good job.
Yeah, and that counts against, like, the Wizards are stuck
Yeah.
with it in the cap situation. A third of their cap is gone for the next 4 years, and they might not have a player.
Unless, and like we said, like it's guaranteed unless, under the uniform player contract, he violated it somehow. Say he didn't actually fall at his house. He was,
He was playing an organized basketball
yeah.
game in
not
his
sanctioned
backyard.
or- Yeah.
or
An
something.
ultra hazardous activity.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those crazy exceptions to the, but I really liked your guys' posts on, that we've had so far. And maybe we're doing too much talking. I mean, are there any questions? Or if anybody's live zooming in, please.
I don't just think anyone
No one
was
is
able
able
to
to.
join it, but we are recording it, so
Okay.
both for you all here as well as
Mhm.
those that will be able to watch it later, it will be uploaded onto Canvas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other cluster of questions got a number of them on Kyler Murray, So maybe that kind of ties in with, a lot of different themes and the two-sport athlete, but the A's are his subjects. Kyler Murray is the king. The A's are his subjects. And go ahead, you guys take it from here. I have an opinion,
Yeah.
but I'm going to hold.
Yeah, well, so one of the specific questions that came in about this was, do we think that leagues will begin working in the player contract a clause restricting them from potentially playing 2 major sports during the duration of their career? I don't know that we're going to see that. And in fact, yesterday there was a list of recommendations that the MLB and the MLBPA made to
That's
each other.
one of the links too.
Yeah,
You guys
for-
should have that.
for the collective bargaining negotiations ongoing. And one of them was the ability of the Oakland Athletics in this case. They would have been able to offer Kyler Murray a major league contract as opposed to putting him through the minor league system to try to induce him for the next Kyler Murray. More importantly, to stay with Major League Baseball as opposed to considering the NFL offer. Yeah, and as far as what I think about that, he needs a new agent or a manager or something. The interviews that he's doing is just horrible right now. It's like they're scheduling stuff and letting him show up and then not telling him what to say.
That was gonna be the point I was. He's not well managed.
That Dan Patrick, that was just uncomfortable to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. Come on. Well, let's jump to Antonio Brown, since we do talk a lot about the personal conduct policy and domestic violence. That was also one of the send-ins. And again, personal conduct policy is going to kick in. All of those different rules that have been developed through Ray Rice and even Adrian Peterson, which is slightly different. Study guides on each and every one of those. Greg Hardy, there've been so many of these, hard to keep up with them. But he's representing him as Darren Eichner came on the case for Antonio Brown. I think he was announced as
He did,
counsel
yeah.
for. But unclear what happened here. But what do you think? Let's us stop talking. Been able to do the reading and follow. What should happen next? I mean, what is he entitled to due process? Entitled to, I guess Ezekiel Elliott is the most recent example. Claim didn't do it. He never even criminal charges filed against him, and yet he's suspended, right? By the preponderance of the evidence that he had done it. I mean, is the system, is it too much, Lindsay? Is just too much commission support? I mean, like they tried to get others to make these decisions, and no, it has to stay with the commissioner. There's a study done on that, right? They have all these panels of people, and the next prosecutors will be looking at these cases. But at the end of the day, commissioner, the standard is preponderance of the evidence. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. Is this broken? You think if you're Heitner representing Antonio Brown, you're going to say, Jesus, the deck is stacked against me. This woman will come forward and say, he did it. He's going to be suspended. That's kind of how Ezekiel Elliott ended up.
I think yes and no. I think no, because on the one hand, it is going to harm the reputation of the league, because it is kind of, yeah, he may not have been convicted, but he will be kind of, out there for everybody to see, be out there, and kind of convicted him for public spectrum, public opinion.
I mean, does it work this way? Okay, let's just go through it. Woman told police her wrist was injured in the fall. She showed them an abrasion with some scabbing. Used both hands. I mean, Kareem Hunt is the most recent example, right? I mean, I've seen the video of him right here, the 9, right downtown. He's maybe out of the league forever, maybe not, but he's out of the league for the rest of the season. So that's the kind of violence that he can abide. But this is a little bit different. Dropped off Brown's daughter, is asked to be reimbursed for the child's hair appointment. Woman positioned herself so he couldn't close his front door. Brown said, "You need to leave," then used both hands to push to the ground. She didn't file a victim's affidavit. They could pursue an arrest for battery if they found probable cause, got upset with the officers. Didn't want Brown arrested, just canceled the report. Looking into the incident, and then Heitner is forward. So this is really domestic violence. I mean, keep picking on you, but what do you think? I mean, is this the kind of thing where stuff happens? I mean, and there's no criminal involved. No wrongdoing ever occurs, says his attorney. So he gets a free pass on that as unequal treatment relative to Ezekiel Elliott or Kareem Hunt.
Antonio Brown's my client, I'm certainly saying that.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, yeah, keep going.
I think what happened with Kareem Hunt certainly was the right thing to do. I know the team did it more because he lied, not because of what he did.
Right.
But I would say, especially because the NFL just seems to be inconsistent and Steelers, so
Very judge.
get him out of there.
Yes, yes. Agreed, especially with the last one. I don't know. Anybody want to take the other view that, like, you're under, as we said before, you're under a microscope. Everybody watches for every move. You should know if you touch, they won't in any way, shape, or form. You're gonna get suspended. Is that going too far? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going too far, but I just think we're in an environment now, and it's not even in sports too, and everything, where it's such a sensitive topic, and I think that that's a good thing. You know, if the women watch the sport, children watch the sport, girls, boys, I think it's part of capitalizing on the whole, you know, positive culture of the sport. Who wants their daughter, children to watch a sport where these guys are accused or, you know, of hitting their women? Or there's a video of this guy hitting women, but they're celebrated because they played the sport really well.
I agree. Thanks. We practiced that. That was the answer. I would give it myself. So, okay, I got 5 more minutes maybe. So let's try to talk through this.
See that Anthony Davis came up a couple of times. Essentially, this
Oh
question
yeah,
was
the
asking,
Pelicans.
is there a way for the NBA to combat players putting out trade requests? Because it seems as though NBA players and free agency never ends, and they can demand a trade, and to a certain extent that limits what teams can do. This kind of crosses over into the rep course too, but
Right. But they're anti-tampering, anti-collusion laws.
yeah, there are rules that are collectively bargained that are in place. You know, Rich Paul, who is Anthony Davis's agent, received a $50,000 fine for publicly saying that they had requested a trade. You know, to take a line from the show The Wire, I mean, it's all in the game. Like, this is just, this is what happens. I mean, teams, you know, like last night, Harrison Barnes is traded while he's sitting on the bench playing for the Dallas Mavericks. So the inverse happens by the teams. You know, you're only as useful to the team as you are productive. And the minute that you're either not productive or a better offer comes along, they'll ship you out. So really, this is sort of just, you know, in a league that is very driven by the large personalities and the names and the players, which is, I think, why the NBA is being so successful right now. This is just a byproduct of that. And I think it's only going to continue.
Super teams in mega cities is what the leagues want. I mean, really, yeah.
Yeah. Plus, I will say, like, just in the time that we've been in here, my phone keeps buzzing from all the NBA trades that are happening right now, and everyone is watching it. So it makes the NBA product more interesting and better because everybody's eating this stuff up.
But do you become less, anybody Cavs fan? I mean, like, we went from penthouse to penthouse, right? Like that, right? I mean, is that fair that the mega teams with the superstars can sort of create it? I mean, there is a cap, and there are consequences if you exceed the cap. And in football, there's a hard cap. But, I mean, should the mega stars, the mega cities be able to command, you know, the best players? Because that's good for the league. Get more sticking eyeballs on the big games like LA plays, whatever, Lakers play, another big city. I mean, it's if you're the commissioner, that's a good thing. Or do you want every team to have a chance to win every game?
It's entertainment. And the point of entertainment is to generate revenue. And I think the NBA, it's like the Warriors, I think,
Right.
there's some Tumbleman value to
Exactly.
Steph Curry. No, I don't think it's fair, but it is fair at the same time. And you just kind of have to wait till, if you're a small market team, you just have to wait till destiny comes around and gets you championship.
You draft better, and you get, you know, Zion Williams.
Not trying for Zion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, it comes down to, as we've been saying throughout, for those remotely, you know, unless you have a relegation system like, you know, Premier League, like as bad as the Cavs are, you don't get to play in the NBA anymore, kind of thing. It's a race to the bottom. You want to finish last because you get the best chance for the top pick. Well, I guess it's
Top,
changed.
you want the bottom three.
Bottom three are equal opportunity to get the first thing.
Yeah, so it's a race to the bottom three.
Race to the bottom three, so just stay in the bottom three, no matter what, you know, that's the goal this year. I mean, we bought a season series, can't give them away. Okay, we got like 2 more minutes, so let's try to get, and please, any questions you can get, yeah, please.
There's one quick one that can be answered very easily. Super twos need to be in the top 22% of total service. Does that refer only to the amount of time played, or does it refer to production as well? Production doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just time played.
That's why they don't put them on the roster. Keep their service clock from beginning to.
Right, which is now the inverse of what we were just talking about, where teams have so much control over a player and your ability to move by controlling whether or not you're on the major league roster and getting that service time. And then you get free agency like Bryce Harper waiting for the payday, and payday hasn't come yet.
They would like to get a supermax. I mean, baseball would love to have two supermax, but nobody's really got that.
Could you explain publicity rights in the NFL more specifically? I'm a bit confused about how the NFLPA channels this. So I think this goes for all the leagues, and it's a fairly quick answer. Group licensing scheme. So if it involves, I think in the NFL it's 5 players or more, 6 players or more. Sorry, yeah. So if a corporation comes to the NFL and wants to do some sort of partnership and they want to include 6 or more players in it, then that would be done through the group licensing scheme. If it's J.J. Watt doing his Papa John commercial, though, that's negotiated by CAA, by Tom Condon and his team on behalf of just J.J. Watt. So individual publicity right, individual deal done by your agent, group licensing scheme done with PA.
Chapter 7, we'll get into this a lot more. Collective bargaining, intellectual property.
And the CBA cheat sheet too.
CBA cheat sheet, yeah. And even chapter 2 gets into a little bit.
Let's see.
Comparative analysis of, if it's got the social media in chapter 2, all that stuff. And let me just say while we're there, excuse me for interrupting. The waiver of recourse that runs through this also goes back to back. It's why the player can't go running off the court. He signs the waiver of recourse in each and every league for their contract. But it's also an important part of chapter 2. Okay.
So in the NBA, what moves can a team make when they want to end a contract before the term of the contract is over? For instance, Chris Paul's contract with the Houston Rockets. I can tell you that the Houston Rockets are not ending his contract early. But in the NBA, you have the ability to do contract buyouts. To tie it over into chapter 2 overall, though, the first thing you need to look at is guaranteed versus non-guaranteed monies. In the NFL, if you don't have any guaranteed money left on your contract and they cut you, you don't get anything remaining on your contract. If it's guaranteed money, they still have to pay it to you. In the NBA, pretty much every contract now is fully guaranteed. So if you try to release a player early, you're still on the hook for the amount of money that's owed to them unless you agree to an early buyout. And in Major League Baseball, it's, again, guaranteed across the board. So.
Okay. That pretty much covers it. Why don't we, any final questions? Thanks a lot for your attention. This was great. You got our contact information. Please be in touch with us. And we got another one on the 27th, I think, another live session.
Which is a Wednesday, which may be better for the rest of the class too, for those of you that are remote. I think some of you let me know that Wednesday is better for you guys. And I think it's also an hour earlier, so.
12:15.
Yeah, it'll be around lunchtime.
12:15 on the 27th. So hopefully we'll get some pizza and go from there. I think it's in this, is it in the same room?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's in the back
Okay.
of the book. Right here.